Product provided by Nintendo. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a worthy spiritual successor to Xenoblade Chronicles. But how worthy is the question? Since there is no doubt that with this game, Monolith Soft has tried to return to the more traditional formula found in the original Xenoblade. But before we go into mostly spoiler-free details, we have to get a few facts out of the way. Xenoblade Chronicles was originally released in Japan in 2010, Europe in 2011, and the United States in 2012. As such, it was a swan song game for the Wii and has since been remade for the new Nintendo 3DS in 2015. The game is considered a JRPG masterpiece, and one of the best games of the 7th generation. With a Metacritic score of 92, it made Monolith Soft a serious contender and, in some eyes, the new king of JRPGs. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, on the other hand, is not much worse, with a Metacritic score of... Both games are complex and incredibly long adventures that can only be compared to actual novels. This is no exaggeration. These games are simply not for everyone, because they are long and deep in all possible measures. And as such, we have decided to divide this JRPG war into 3 battles, because trust us, we don't have time for more. These are as follows: story/quest, gameplay with side quests and music, and world/environments. The grand battle between Xenoblade Chronicles is about to break out. With partly an exception to X, the Xenoblade Chronicles franchise has been regarded for its excellent storytelling. The story in the first game about Shulk's quest of discovery, growth, and self-realization to himself and the legendary blade the Monado is one of the greatest tales ever presented in video games. From the very beginning, which throws you straight into the battle of Sword Valley. This game keeps you in constant suspension and tells a believable, mature, and heartbreaking story that rivals some of the best film scripts with unexpected turnouts, gripping moments, and an unreal amount of plot twists that you will begin to suspect everything and everyone. The story is conveyed in a way that makes it believable and, most importantly, fit overall with the overarching themes, conflicts, and premises set in the game. The main, supporting, and even minor characters have their place, motivations, dreams, concerns, and most importantly, are real individuals, not generic stereotypes. This world is as diverse as it gets. There's so many races like the Homs, the comedic Nopons, the elitist High Entias, and obviously the Mechons. Xenoblade Chronicles' story is so good that even though it's been out for well over 5 years in America, 6 years in Europe, and 7 years in Japan, we still refuse to spoil any major plot twists, as this is one of those games that you have to experience on your own. You have to see to believe, as the conflict between Bionis and Mechonis is so indescribably well written, if we were to explain it, we would be sitting here the entire day. The only thing we will say is that the story and Shulk's adventure begins in your typical hero's journey fashion of revenge, following his hometown being ambushed by one of the antagonists, Metalface, and an army of Mechon. Faced by these threats, our protagonist claims the mythical blade of the Bionis, the Monado, which apart from letting him strike back, allows him to see visions of future events. But that is just the tip of the iceberg, as the story in Xenoblade Chronicles is so deep and filled with unexpected reveals and outcomes that it is impossible to summarize this story without sitting here for hours. It goes into very deep and conflicting matters. The story is also aided by brilliant London British voice acting talents, so you know it's genuine. So how does Xenoblade Chronicles 2 compare to the masterpiece that is the story in Xenoblade Chronicles? Well, the voice actors this time are Scottish, with the exception of the American Blades, so there's that. And it is definitely just as complex and detailed as the first game, even with some similar moments, like the hero's journey. You play as a salvager named Rex, living in Allrest, a world covered by a literal sea of clouds. The closest thing resembling land are the Titans, much like the two regions in the first game, Bionis and Mechonis. Only this time, there is way more than two, but more on that later. 2 begins at a much slower pace than the first game, having you take the time to learn the combat, characters, and situation that you're in. In a mercenary job gone horribly wrong, Rex is revived by a mystical and literally hot blade named Pyra, and in return, he pledges to take her to the promised land of Elysium, which is set on top of the World Tree at the center of Allrest. The whole game revolves around getting to this paradise, even though most people believe it is a myth. What is a blade, you ask? In Xenoblade 2, blades are living, breathing entities whose sole purpose is to aid their comrades named drivers in battle. Pyra is a special blade, for reasons we probably can't explain because spoilers, but you can say that both blades, her and the Monado, have deep, interesting backstories and grow throughout the adventure. Rex as the main protagonist may come off as less likable than Shulk thanks to his childlike presence and carefree attitude, but you'll find that he is more like Shulk than you might imagine. He is just as brave, open-minded, and caring when it comes to his lifelong friend and former Titan Gramps and Pyra herself. Though, I will say for sure that the art style in this game is far from subtle, as there are a number of typical anime stereotypes. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 at times can feel Western in style, but Xenoblade Chronicles 2 takes the term Japanese anime and cranks it up to 11. You can see that in the way the female blades are designed. However, the Ropons, a franchise staple and comedic relief, serve as much more than just a route for a quick chuckle. This is all the more evident with one of your allies, Tora, whose family plays an important part later on in the story and quickly became one of our favorite personal companions. Like the first game, it's tough to go into further details about the story without running into some heavy spoilers, but just to put it in a few words, the plot in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 will wash the taste out of the bland and phoned-in story Xenoblade Chronicles X left behind. So between the two titles, which has the better story? Xenoblade 2 has a solid foundation taking in some of the best qualities from the first game, such as likable characters with intricate backstories. But Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is not close to being our favorite game this year. That is thanks to the in-your-face anime tropes and jiggle physics in a Xenoblade game. Come on guys, the portrayal of female blades is waifu material on a whole other level. Not only that, but it's extremely tough to live up to the grand epic that is the first Xenoblade's story. It has a natural harmony, everything blends together perfectly, nothing feels forced, nothing feels misplaced, and all twists, turns, and reveals make total sense. It is one of the greatest, if not the greatest video game story ever told. So in this regard, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is up to unfair competition. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 wins this battle for story. Xenoblade Chronicles is a JRPG in the sense that you have a squad of 3 playable members that you can swap between at any time, and for the most part, it goes like this. You explore vast lands to fight different types of creatures to level up, gain materials and equipment, and fight powerful bosses. And as the story progresses, your team is expanded, but in combat, you still only use 3 fighters at most. These are instrumental, because unlike traditional turn-based RPGs, you only control one of them in battles. The exception being in chain attacks, which are exactly what they sound like. You control all 3 members of your selected party, and of course, Shulk's ability to foresee deaths and strong attacks before they happen through visions. The real-time combat in Xenoblade Chronicles is rather simplistic and only slightly changes throughout the game, with the Monado gaining more powers, signs, and a few additional attacks. For the most part, your attacks are laid out at the bottom of the screen on a linear line of wheels, and the only thing you need to do is press A to unleash these attacks. On these wheels are different character arts that are unique to each member and will be recharged throughout the battle. With that being said, all party members throughout the game are balanced and useful in combat. There are no overpowered or underpowered party members, and the level progression is more or less identical among characters, since Shulk or any other team member you're fighting with will automatically attack. The key is to time your attack with their attacks to inflict a more powerful combo for massive damage.
So here's this giant enemy crab, and you attack its weak point for massive damage.
In some boss fights, in particular against mechons, you need to use the power of the Monado or even chain attacks to inflict breaks on your opponents to allow your party members to actually be able to attack them. These tactics are crucial against most of the bosses. Outside of normal combat, Xenoblade Chronicles offers different forms of crafting through clothing and armor, and gem harvesting to increase the strength of your weapons and apparel. On top of all these customization options, Xenoblade Chronicles has a game-defining mechanic that weaves between the story and gameplay, namely Shulk's visions. In the middle of battle, you'll get a vision of the future which will occur unless you take action. This can be initiating a specific break or topple against an enemy that is about to deliver a devastating blow, or warn team members before the attacks take place. Needless to say, these are central to the strategy in most of the battles. Since this is a game that emphasizes exploration in an open-world environment, you are able to pick, choose, and even ignore battles or the many side quests as long as they don't conflict with the main quest. The only exception to the rule of picking and avoiding battles is when you hear this music. That is a sign to get the hell out of that place or let them know our names. The boss fights for the most part play in a similar fashion, only they demand specific attacks and an understanding of the opponent you are facing. This is especially the case with the Mechon boss fights, where prior knowledge to the combat system is crucial. Speaking of boss fights, these are incredible, and so well built up throughout the story of the game that you can't wait to take them down. Saying anything else would be spoiling some of the highlights. The metal face fights are of course classics, but that's all we'll mention of them for now. So let's see how well 2 stacks up. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 has the same exact combat system as the rest of the games, but it is way more refined and user-friendly. Even so, the weapon wheel seen on the bottom screen in the first game is nowhere to be found. This is the result of a design change where the attacks are now mapped on the A, B, X, Y buttons rather than being sought after on the D-pad like in every other entry. The D-pad isn't totally useless, however, since you can swap between blades in the middle of battle. That is correct, Pyra is not your only blade in your quest, unlike Shulk's Monado. You will recruit more blades as the story progresses, and you can get them yourself by collecting core crystals, which are about as common as the housefly. So what do you do when you have more blades than fingers on your hands? This is where the Merc feature comes in, where you can send them off on paid mercenary missions to come back leveled up even further, and maybe with some additional resources and equipment. It's a great and easy way to continue leveling up your blade without having to constantly swap between them in battle. These and other side quests will easily fill your time up to the serious, staple novel lengths, even though the great variety of customizable armor has been dropped in favor of other forms of crafting. But back to the combat system. Blades have changed the way fights work in a Xenoblade game. You still have a party of up to 3 members, which are warriors known as drivers, but each driver has their own blade, so the screen will certainly look more crowded than you might be used to. Depending on which blade you equip, you will have access to a different set of powers. You can have a fire-type blade like Pyra, or find a wind-type blade to take on enemies that are weak to those types of attacks. This also means that some enemies, including bosses, will have their own blades as well, especially Tora, who is accompanied by an artificial blade named Poppy, who is unique in that you can gather parts for her by playing a little game called Tiger Tiger. This one is actually harder than it looks. The bosses found in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 are, for the most part, not as massive as the bosses found in the first game. Most of them are humanoid, and if anything, it will be their blade that is the gargantuan one in this battle. That being said, the same formula from the first Xenoblade applies here, with the bosses being especially rewarding once you learn how to take them down. Drivers and blades level up in different ways. Drivers, which are you and your party members, will increase in strength and health every time they level up. They can also use skill points acquired during battles to improve on certain skills. Blades, on the other hand, can only improve their skills if they fulfill certain tasks, which can reward them with more focus, strength, etc. Other than being used in battles, they can also help you explore the worlds you're in by eliminating blockades with fire or digging up more resources with excavation. And in terms of music, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is very close in style to the first game, and it shows. You got your Guara Plains, you got your We Will Know Your Names, and a bunch of other tracks that are remarkably similar or inspired by the ones found in the first Xenoblade Chronicles. But there are some differences which we will not spoil here. The soundtrack is overall better in Xenoblade Chronicles, but we should just be glad we got rid of that untraditional and somewhat misplaced soundtrack from X. We believe that the winner of this battle should be clear. Both games have excellent combat systems with just as many similarities as there are differences. But there is no doubting that if you went right from Xenoblade 1 to 2, 2 feels like a perfect improvement. Having to keep rapidly clicking left on the D-pad to get to the power I want is way harder than simply just pressing a button, and makes battles and combat feel more seamless than the line of attack buttons found in 1 and X. Despite music being important, the actual gameplay is instrumental to the Xenoblade franchise. Seeing this and the fact that the Grand Quest in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 can be taken anywhere and played anytime outside of a TV or a 240p handheld in HD, Battle 2 goes to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Both games are set on Titans. No, not those kind of Titans. More like this. Or this. Starting with Xenoblade 2, the Titans in this game are creatures with minds of their own. Some of them, like Rex's own Titan Gramps, are not that huge, while others put the word Titan to good use. They're so huge that people have made settlements on their backs. Not only that, but they are teeming with flora and fauna of all types. Some of them are even used as naval battleships, which make for some good linear levels. Even though they are indeed huge, having a game set on 1 or 2 Titans for that matter wouldn't be nearly enough for this game, so they put in many more with their own unique sets of weather, terrain, and geography. Each are inhabited by people who have formed different kingdoms or empires. Safe to say, without these Titans, All Rest would not be a very safe world to live in. In contrast, Xenoblade Chronicles has only 2 Titans. 2 Titans locked in an unresolved war after both dealt devastating blows to each other, freezing them in place. And that's the world where most of Xenoblade Chronicles takes place. The organic heaven that is Bionis, and the mechanical wonder, or hell depending on your perspective, Mechonis. To put it frankly, these Titans are more like entire worlds, with multiple countries, civilizations, landscapes, all hidden inside and on the surface of the different Titans. A good example here is Guara Plains, a massive field which expands across Bionis' left leg, or the land at the top of Bionis. All of the civilizations and locations in Xenoblade Chronicles feel connected, and are incredibly memorable in a way that you feel a sense of attachment to both these sections of the Titans and their inhabitants. Naturally, the Titans play a very significant part in the plot of the game, something that is made clear in the very beginning. Bionis and Mechonis are so memorable that they simply mark for an incredible spectacle within the game's world. Probably the strongest component about this premise is that you are overlooking the opposing titan at all times, thus serving as a constant reminder that you are not on a continent, but titans. There are much more to the titans throughout the game, but going any deeper would spoil major plot points. And if you haven't beaten Xenoblade Chronicles 2, then we will definitely not spoil the titans as they are the focal point of that game. Despite having stunning locations and provinces, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 falls a little short to the provinces found on Bionis and Mykonos in Xenoblade Chronicles. A reason for this is that the gridlocked titans mark for a much more memorable and filled with suspense world than as the world is compact compared to the much more fragmented and less connected titans in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. The conflict and threat is constant in Xenoblade Chronicles as the inhabitants of these worlds share two neighboring titans, while in 2, the titans are located far apart from each other. In terms of settlements, both games offer their highs and lows, but then again, these games are not nearly as much about the settlements as they are about the exploration of massive landscapes and environments surrounding these, since that is where you, as the player, will spend most of the time in the game. Simply put, Xenoblade Chronicles Titans are much more memorable and lasting after you have completed the game. They are the definition of unforgettable. The environments in both games are beautiful, but it's this overarching element to Xenoblade Chronicles that makes it stand out and securing a decisive blow in its favor. The winner of the battle and war is Xenoblade Chronicles. So there you have it. Despite a near photo finish, Xenoblade Chronicles in our eyes holds back the challenger with a better story and overall framework, but doesn't do this crushingly as the refinements to the gameplay in Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is significant compared to 1. As to a game score, we believe that Xenoblade Chronicles, when it came out on the Wii, was a solid 93 out of 100, and since the expectations for a successor on much more powerful hardware will be higher, our final score for Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a solid 89 out of 100. Both games earn our seal of approval, and 2 as the newcomer is definitely a must-play, must-own title for the Nintendo Switch this holiday season. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 may not be at the completely same commanding heights as Xenoblade Chronicles, but is still an incredible game. We hold no grunts if you prefer Xenoblade Chronicles 2. We are more than glad to discuss this with you in the comments section below, and since you're still here, why not like, share, and subscribe with the notification bell to not miss our Game of the Year battle when Breath of the Wild goes up against Super Mario Odyssey. We want to thank Nintendo for sending us a pre-launch copy of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 for this review, and our patrons, including royal producers Transcendent Sacred Courage and Kenyatta Ali, who holds us up when YouTube falsely demonetizes our Nintendo videos. You can easily support the realm on patreon.com/commonrealm. We would also like to thank our friend Trend Dynamo on our Discord server Sacred Realm for supplying us with HD Xenoblade Chronicles footage. It looked really damn good if I do say so myself. Until the next video, this was the Commonwealth Realm, and we will see you soon.